you've talked brilliantly about bereavement and how poetry has helped. One of our weeks is about trauma. And I'm quite interested in moving away from, and PTSD, moving away from the notions of trauma as being a sort of male soldiers in the field, of course where shell shock and PTSD originated. But I'm very interested in how trauma affects, well, women. Women who go through miscarriage or experience stillbirth or rape. And so one of our key texts for that is a Katherine Philips poem. This is a woman who lost 16 children, and she writes a poem to her son, who died after 10 days, her baby son. It's a beautiful poem, and it still speaks to me. It was written in the 1600s, and after all these years, it's a text I turned to when I had a miscarriage. And I just felt that our experience, it felt the same. I just thought, I did think you get it, you understand it. And that was enormously helpful. But also I thought I was fascinated by the sort of process of bereavement, that just because you lose 16 doesn't mean you don't feel the same pain every time you lose a child. We sometimes think historically, well, infant mortality rates were so high, women sort of expected. It makes no difference. When I read that poem, she's feeling she's feeling the same way that I felt.
Yeah. And I didn't know this poem, but I read it when you showed it to me, and one of the things that struck me is this very long title with all the dates, the date of Hector's birth and the date of his death. And then she says that she'd been married for 40 days and 40 months, and he lived for 40 days. And it's a sense of counting, that every child counted, and she's counting. And then she talks in the end about her numbers being consoling. So how she's sort of holding herself together with counting it all up.
That's brilliant. And all the time she's counting up being pregnant and all the months and the months of being married and the children, and she's probably, as you say, thinking about the numbers of numbers. But the grief just feels, and she's a little rosebud, and you just feel that I just feel that she's speaking to me across all of the centuries. But I found it very consoling, but also very cathartic. You know, I did cry when I read it, and I thought, I feel better. Yeah. I just feel better because I've let it all out.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for not repressing it and just letting it all out.
It's lovely as well. The poem has 2 interjections in brackets. One of them, I think, is sweet babe, and she puts that in brackets. And talking about letting it out, she's sort of holding these words in, and I thought that was the most tender bit of the poem.
It is.
Because, and it's interesting, we talk about poem and you must have to speak poetry aloud to really get it. I think that's actually one of the poems that you lose something if you say it aloud, because you have to see the brackets. We put things in brackets because you can't speak brackets, and the brackets here hold what is unspeakable, which is the amount of love she had.
I think that's such a good point. And it's the most poignant bit, sweet babe.
Yeah.
Actually, it's enclosed, isn't it? It's enclosed.
Like,
it's
like a hug.
Yeah, like a hug. Yeah, like an almost. It's just getting out of her, and she doesn't quite want to say it, but it's so tender. It's so beautiful, so poignant. And
I think that's often one of the things I really love about poetry, actually, is how it works on the page. And you were talking about that earlier, is the spaces. And what happens on a line break. And sometimes one of the most awful things about bereavement or trauma is you couldn't possibly put it into words. You couldn't possibly put it into words what it means to lose someone, and to know, to lose the child that you imagined that you would have, and to know that life of becoming that isn't there, or to lose the life that you would have had with your father, what he would have seen. You can't put that into words, but somehow sometimes like a line break, it sounds extraordinary, but that space, things can be said through silence or through space or through form that make much more sense than words.